Welcome back, welcome back. Read almost any headline these days. Yes, the world's outlook seems gloomy. Population growth, climate change, poverty. The problems of the world seem insurmountable. Not so, says one of the world's leading economists. Jeffrey Sachs is a special advisor to the UN Secretary General and director of the Earth Institute. And in his new book, he claims that with international will and cooperation, all these crises can be averted. Jeffrey Sachs joins me with his upbeat message now. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
And thank you. And basically these three major headaches can be countered.
These are big challenges. Can be averted is the operational phrase, not necessarily will be. We need to get into action, which we've not been doing. But the amazing thing is that our technologies are so strong. If we focus our attention on better energy systems, sustainability, on addressing the problems of the poorest of the poor, we can solve these problems. And it's not going to break the bank to do so. It could save the world, but not break the bank. That's the good news.
So let's take them one by one. Overpopulation, what do we need to do there?
Well, the problem there is that there are still very, very poor people that are having 7 or 8 children. Fertility rates are very high. Often in those places, the problem is the children are dying in large numbers. There's hunger, and parents say, we don't know whether our children will survive. What has been found around the world is when child survival is up, when the boys and girls stay in school through secondary school, when agriculture is made more productive, when people have access to health services, then the fertility rates come down significantly, population tends to stabilize, and those places end up much better off on their own and much better off for the world also. So the idea is focus on the key things that will lead people to choose rightly in their own self-interest to have smaller families, healthier children, and children that stay in school. The evidence is that the so-called fertility transition, the voluntary reduction of how many children people are having, can go quite quickly, down from 6 or 7 to 2 to 3.
In a generation?
In a generation, even faster, in 10 or 15 years, if the conditions that lead to that are put in place. Children surviving, kids staying in school, including girls staying through secondary school, and the other things I mentioned.
And what about number 2, extreme poverty?
Here is the basic paradox. Why is it in the early 21st century we have people dying because they're too poor to stay alive? It's an absurdity with all of the technology and skill that we have, and yet extreme poverty afflicts about 1 billion people on the planet, heavily focused in Africa right now. What do they need? They need better tools in agriculture, even simple things like help to get fertilizer and high-yield seeds. A clinic in the village, things as simple as an anti-malaria bed net, access to basic life-saving antibiotics or oral rehydration, basic vitamins. The point I'm making on all of these things is that it's standard, proven technologies. If we could help the poorest of the poor get the basics, then they can get on with their lives and become part of a dynamic world economy like the rest of the world. Connectivity, roads, power, and so forth, very straightforward. Clinics, schools, and more help with agriculture. I've been costing this in the book and also for the Secretary General. This is less than 1% of the income of the rich world that would be needed to be mobilized to help make those investments.
And the third, climate change. That we can tackle as well.
Climate change is basically, largely, a result of the way we burn fossil fuels, of course, oil, gas, coal. We're putting up about 30 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The risks are profound, growing, already present with more droughts, more extreme events, and so on. We need a sustainable energy system. What does that mean? It means to the extent that we continue to use fossil fuels, which we will, we need carbon capture and sequestration. In other words, when you burn coal at a power plant, capture the carbon dioxide, put it under the ground safely. We need to prove that technology. When you burn gasoline in the gas tank for the automobiles, instead of getting 25 miles per gallon, we ought to be aiming for automobiles such as the plug-in hybrids that could get 100 miles per gallon or more.
Obviously, two things occurs, the things you're saying. Obviously, as you say in the book also, that it needs an international cooperative will, which is not always forthcoming, as we know, in the nations of the world. And in the second, it needs a triumph of common sense, of intellect, of intelligence, of common sense.
To me, the whole mindset issue needs to be changed. The whole war approach, in my view, is a disaster, and we need to say we need a common approach to solve the common problems of water, of power, of food production. And we're getting just a little inkling. If we don't do that, food prices soaring, energy prices soaring, we're not solving problems now, we're making them.
That's right. Well, you were saying, Jeffrey, there we have a common problem, now we must see that we have the common sense to deal with it. Thank you for being with us, Jeffrey.
Oh, what a pleasure.
Thank you for bringing us an upbeat message.
Well, thank you very much. An honor to be with you.
Since taking over as president from his older brother Fidel in February, Raul Castro has been sending mixed signals. On the one hand, Cuba has seen a series of liberalizing measures, a ban on owning mobile phones, renting cars and buying computers was lifted, and nearly all death sentences, we're told, are to be commuted to prison terms. On the other hand, repression is also never far away. Last week, a group of 10 women known as Ladies in White were detained in Havana while staging a peaceful protest to call for their jailed dissident husbands to be freed. So, what does it all mean? Joining me now is Emily Morris from the Economist Intelligence Unit. Welcome, Emily. Mixed signals, are they predominantly liberal or predominantly repressive or 50-50?
I'd say, on balance, that they're liberal. I say that because there have been a series of measures over quite a period now of moving economically towards some opening up of markets. And also that the Cubans have, the death sentence decision was actually part of a pattern that's going on there at the moment.
So, do you think that Raul has always been more liberal than his brother?
That's very, very difficult to say. And in fact, I would actually say that there's the difference ideologically between Raul and Fidel is insignificant. It's very, very small. But what we do have is a different kind of personality and different circumstances. And so the series of changes have actually reflected the fact that the Cuban economy is actually doing better, and they're feeling less threatened at the moment than they were several years ago.
And he's announced as well, Raul, hasn't he, that a Cuban Communist Party Congress will be held, which that sounds like the hard line rather than the liberal line. What does it portend?
Well, the Communist Party Congress normally used to happen every 5 to 6 years. This one is actually 11 years since the last one. So in a sense, it's no change to have a Communist Party Congress. In fact, it's overdue. And Communist Party Congresses often signify that there are changes, that they're going to make big decisions. And so I think that we should actually interpret that as a sign of change and a sign of preparing for change, is holding that Congress.
And do you think that the result of this American election could be recognition and the end of isolation for Cuba?
Well, it's very interesting. It's the first time that a presidential candidate, that's Barack Obama, has actually said that he would engage in talks with the Cuban president. And so that could signify an important change. And from the Cuban side, they've actually reiterated their position, which is that they would be prepared to talk to the US without conditions. Now, that's always been very delicate because the US is reluctant to talk to Cuba without some kind of liberalization as well. But it does open the possibility, and certainly after this many years of the existing policy on the US side not succeeding in its objectives, there's been a shift within the US towards a rethink.
What could be the next big change in Cuba?
I think, well, a series of small changes is actually what I think is more likely to happen this year. One big significant change concerns the exchange rate. They have a dual system now, and if they were to unify it, it would actually have an enormous impact on the level of effective consumer spending, and therefore actually on their society. Quite profound.
Thank you very much indeed, Emily.
Thanks.
You'll be keeping tabs on it, and we'll be dipping into your thoughts as well. Thank
Thanks
you
very
very much indeed. To Emily, that's all for this week's programme. In 7 days' time, a special Frost Over the World as part of this channel's 60 Years of Division series to mark 6 decades of the State of Israel. The quartet's envoy to the Middle East, Tony Blair, will be with us. Israel's President, Shimon Peres. Palestine's Prime Minister, Salam Fayyad. And more. All will be with us next week. Same time, same spot on the dial. Until then, goodbye for now.